welcome back to the channel, and hello if you're new. Before we get into the video, make sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed the video, comment your thoughts down below and subscribe to the channel to stay posted on my future content. And now without further ado, let's get into the video. So as we're covering the full season, let's get started with the first episode. So starting with episode 1, it wastes no time throwing us into the action as Reacher prevents a kidnapping and gets tangled with Beck, a businessman with some very shady connections. Right away, the tone is clear. This season is darker, more personal, and Reacher's not just muscle, he's playing the long game. But one thing that stands out to me is the pacing. The setup is strong, but the first episode spends a bit too much time laying the groundwork rather than letting Reacher do what he does best. Moving on to episode 2. It picks up as Reacher goes undercover, transport and cargo for Beck. We get a classic Reacher detective work, intimidation and quick problem solving. But the best part? Tension. Every conversation feels like it could explode into a fight at any moment. That being said, this episode leads heavily into the setup again. It's engaging, but you're left waiting for something big to happen. Moving on to episode 3. This episode turns up the heat. The body count rises, Reacher takes bigger risks to earn Beck's trust, and the writing keeps us guessing. I feel like this episode is where the season really finds its groove. The action is brutal, the tension is high, and Reacher's intelligence is just as dangerous as his fists. And this is what we came for. Moving on to episode 4. This episode gives us an emotional shift. We finally get a deeper look into Reacher's past with Quinn. It's personal, it's raw, and it actually makes the stakes feel real. If the first 3 episodes felt like a slow burn, this one finally ignites. The problem? It slows down the pacing a little, and while it's necessary for Reacher's arc, some moments feel stretched out. Moving on to episode 5. In this episode, this is where the mission starts to fall apart, and Reacher and Duffy have to improvise fast. This is the team dynamic we've been waiting for. Everyone has a role, the tension is high and the action is brutal. If I had one issue, it's that some of the villains still feel too predictable, but as a whole, this is one of the stronger episodes. Moving on to episode 6. This episode's all about Reacher's inner struggle. Does he kill Quinn outright, or does he stick to the promise to Duffy? Get a side of Reacher we don't see often, torn between vengeance and control. Great character work, but some of the dialogue feels a little on the nose. Still, the emotional weight carries it through. Moving on to episode 7. In this episode, Reacher and Duffy try to arrange a deal, while Neely heads up to Maine to connect the dots. This episode has one of the strongest build-ups of the season, balancing suspense and action perfectly. It feels like everything's coming to a head, and there's no turning back. Moving on to episode 8. This episode is the season finale. It delivers what we've been waiting for. Jack Reacher versus Quinn, and Jack Reacher versus Paulie. The fights? Brutal. The stakes? Personal. The payoff? Mostly satisfying. If anything, I felt the finale could have stretched the final confrontation a little longer. The build-up was so good that when it ends you almost want to just watch a little more, but as a full season wrap-up, it does deliver. Moving on to my final verdict. Season 3 compared to Season 2, I'd make the argument that Season 2 was better than Season 3. A lot of people are saying Season 3 didn't live up to Season 2, and honestly, I feel the same way, but why? Let's break it down. I felt Season 2 had heart. I also think the biggest reason people loved it was the 1/10th Special Investigations Unit. Reacher's dynamic with Neely, Dixon and O'Donnell made every episode more engaging. Their loyalty, their banter, it just wasn't about solving the case, it was personal, and when they lost Franz, you felt it. Every fight, every decision had an emotional weight. Now when it comes to Season 3, it went for a darker, more isolated story, and that's true to the books, but in a way it lost some of that emotional connection. Duffy's a solid partner, but she doesn't have that history with Reacher like Neely did. Their teamwork feels more functional, not personal, and without the 1/10th, Reacher's journey just feels more colder. The stakes also felt smaller. Season 2 had a military-grade conspiracy, missiles, betrayals and revenge. Season 3, a weapon smuggling ring. It's still serious, but it never quite hits the same level of urgency. Quinn as a villain is great, but his motive, greed, isn't as compelling as Season 2's bigger threat. Then there's the pacing. Season 2 felt tight, every episode built momentum. Season 3, it dragged in the middle a little too much, sneaking around and not enough impact. By the time the finale hit, the action was great, but the build-up wasn't as strong. And the ending? It's open-ended, which fits Reacher's drifting nature, but it doesn't set up Season 4 as clearly as Season 2 did. Some fans liked that, others wanted a more stronger conclusion. So what's my verdict? Reacher Season 2 is better than Season 3. It had better pacing, higher stakes, and most importantly, heart. With that being said, Season 3 is still great, and I'd highly recommend watching. But deep down, if you're feeling like something was missing, it's probably the lack of the 1/10th and those higher emotional stakes. And honestly, I think when Reacher makes allies, it makes sense for them to back him up in a situation where he's up against experienced enemies, not just relying on local fighters. I mean, if he's going up against trained killers, wouldn't it make sense for him to call in people with the same level of experience? That's just my take. What do you guys think? Did season 3 hold up for you, or was season 2 just better? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to stay up to date on my future content. And on that note, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.